Okay, I got you with your coffee. Let's go.
Tis not coffee.
Oh, is it tea?
Tea,
Not whiskey. Not something stronger to get you through this episode.
I didn't say what was in the tea. No, it's just plain tea.
So, penultimate episode of the TV show, season 5, episode 11.
Yes.
Journeycake.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how much I missed this kind of episode.
Yeah.
How much I missed Diana's writing and intent. And I mean, so I was on Facebook yesterday, and it was before I had a chance to actually see the episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw what was going to happen.
Somebody spoiled it for you.
Somebody spoiled it for me. I belong to like a zillion groups, right? So somebody spoiled at least one thing for me, and they spoiled the fact that Roger and Bree go back through the stones. And I'm like, what? That's not supposed to happen. And I'm like, I'm going to be really upset if they've, completely blown this. Mm-hmm. But then I saw that Diana wrote this one, and I'm like, I'll watch it with an open mind. And I'm so glad I did.
Yeah. So I'm thinking having Diana behind on the reins, whatever the metaphor you use for this kind of thing, is the only way they could have done this kind of change in the story and let the fans be okay. Because everybody else would be like up in arms about, that's not until the next book, and just kind of going on and on. But because Diana's written, it's like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah, well, and that's exactly what I did. I mean, I totally did that. And it was just such a breath of fresh air.
Yeah.
It was not expected, but it was, it's like night and day from some of the episodes earlier in the season. Night and day. And I've got some reasons, but tell me your impressions.
Well, I think my impressions are kind of a culmination of what we've been talking about this whole season, of kind of what is going on here? Are they merging Breath of Snow and Ashes with Fiery Cross? Like, what's going? Because there's some ways in which the story is developing that just doesn't seem to make sense unless they're going to do that. Well, hello, they did.
They did.
And so that makes sense to me. Also, it was a little bit spoiled for me too, because I saw, if you're watching Tracy, Outlander's Twitter thing, and she had posted a screen grab of the guy she thinks might be Wendigo, and I was like, oh, what's going on? And then I saw some of the people, there's also a conversation happening on her Twitter about what it is that Bree sees once they've gone back through the stones. And so it was like, hang on a second, they went through the stones? And then also we don't know what she sees, and so it was a really interesting thing of, I'm actually, it's funny, I'm actually excited about not knowing what's going to happen.
Right, I have no idea what they're seeing on the other side, and it's interesting how they've changed up there's so much from A Breath of Snow and Ashes in this particular one. There's it's more Breath of Snow and Ashes than it is
Fiery Cross.
Cross at all. Yep. So you've gotten through a good chunk of the actual story arc for Fiery Cross, and now we are in A Breath of Snow and Ashes, and so I listened to the little thing afterwards that we get in the States that you guys don't, from the producers, and they said they did this purposefully. They know that it was going to upset the fans, which is probably why they asked Diana to come in.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you can get away with a whole lot with Diana at the helm. Yeah.
And they absolutely said this is what they wanted to do, so that they could go to the next place in A Breath of Snow and Ashes. That they have a real need. There's so much in A Breath of Snow and Ashes anyway. And Roger and Bree go back in A Breath of Snow and Ashes earlier than you would think. They go earlier in the book than later. It's not a culmination with them leaving. So I think at least as far as climax is concerned, as far as setting up the next season is concerned, that was a good choice if you're going to write it for only 12 episodes each season.
Yeah.
So I think leaving it with a cliffhanger there, leaving it with a cliffhanger with Jayme lighting the cross. So I have been waiting for Jayme to light that damn cross since the time he built
What's the point of having a beacon if you're not gonna light it? Yeah.
Well, so and that's kind of the thing in writing. You don't introduce something like that unless it's going to be used. You don't introduce, like, if there is a gun on stage, if there is a gun in a scene at all, it's got to get fired.
Again, has to be used. Yeah.
Has to be used.
Yeah.
And so you have to. Otherwise, it's a huge letdown. And this is the same. If you see an insert I'm giving you little hints in filmmaking. If you see an insert on somebody holding something, that thing is important and it's going to be used at some point. This was a huge thing. The whole fiery cross and the building of the cross and to be was the big thing. And I've been waiting all season for them to use it. And they didn't use it at Alamance, and they didn't use it in any of the other battles. They didn't use it for anything else.
They used it at the beginning of the season, though, when they had the gathering, he lit it.
Right.
And then, but did also when he called all his people to go to war, didn't he use it then?
Nope. He used a cross at the very beginning to gather people to say, this is what's going to happen, and I will call you. I'm putting the cross up there. And when you see it lit, you know we're at war.
Right, okay.
You're to come running.
So, but we didn't see the actual lighting of it. Yeah, okay. Okay,
no,
I'll take your word for it on that one.
No, he never lit that particular cross ever. And so we've been waiting all season for him to light that cross, and he lights it for the one reason that he needs to, because of Clare. And that was very intentional by the producers and the writers.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I loved the line, the future's answer to Journeycake is peanut butter and jelly. I mean, that is typical, I think, Diana kind of coming in and using just something just really small that reminds, in the title card of Clare sitting there in Edinburgh, about to see Jayme, cling film wafts away.
Yep. It was, it's so, what was beautiful about this episode is that she's kind of, and what we've missed in several of the other episodes, there are several things, but this is one of the things is the complete mishmashing of centuries, the timeline kind of all coming together. And the fact that they tell Ian, which they do in the books, finally, they tell him about everything and about Clare, which is just a really, and they did that so well in this one. But the idea that she would get peanuts, she would make peanut butter, she would, because she knows that it's a good source of protein, as well as it not being rancid. It
doesn't spoil.
It doesn't need a refrigerator. And so this is something that Clare would do when she knows that there's hunger in her in the ridge. So it was just the way that they melded the scenes together, the way that they melded the story together to say, no, these really are, because every now and then I forget that Bree is 20th century. Every now and then I forget that Clare is 20th century with some of the writing, and the way that Diana never forgets this. And she really brought that in beautifully in this. And they all sat there and ate peanut butter and jelly.
With Jayme with his knife and fork. Yeah, I thought that was really cute. So I did really love that. And so if only the only thing, I mean, I'm glad we got wee beasties as far as the sperm goes, but they didn't get a decent burial. And that I was like, oh, come on.
I know. I was sad about that. I was waiting for him to be really kind of proud of them, knowing exactly what they were and asking for a proper burial. Along that line, the sex scene, thank God, it was just exactly what we needed. That there were several other sex scenes in including the hand job that brings,
back to life.
But there were several other sex scenes, and many of them kind of fell short. This one didn't. This was connecting, and it was was what it's what was missing.
Yeah.
It was directed beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
It was obviously portrayed beautifully. It was written really well, and I was glad for that, because we needed that. We needed that before what happens to her. We know what's going to happen to her in the next episode. You and I, and many of our viewers.
Anybody who's read the books would know. Yeah.
And so it's important that happens. It's really important that happened.
Yeah. In relation to that, though, just a couple funny points. So they're going at it in the window. Meanwhile, Lorne John Grey is either upstairs or downstairs in the guest room. No, he's upstairs. He's upstairs, but whether they are upstairs is the question. So there's that.
No, their room is downstairs.
Okay.
Downstairs and off. Yeah. So he's listening to it, and I'm surprised he doesn't look over. What's that?
And then also the just my concern of her falling out the window.
Yes. Yeah, I was concerned about that too, but he told her to trust him.
He did, and that's fine. But we have talked about you and I in the podcasts about how one of the things we really love is how they get older. And how they age together, and so it was perfect for me because he was asleep. She's like, and you were tired, and I didn't want to bother you, and it was like I know how that feels.
Yep. You look over and oh well. I guess we'll wait until tomorrow.
Yeah.
But he wakes up with such intent.
He does. Yeah.
And that's just, he's like, no, you wanted me, and I'm like, oh wow, that was. And then their playfulness, and I think that's the thing that Diana brought to this episode that has been missing in so many of the other episodes, is she really brought a heart back to it. And the heart of Outlander obviously is Jayme and Clare's relationships, but it spurs the other relationships, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
Is that this episode was incredibly relational. There wasn't a lot of action until it was, and it builds up with this deep connection between Bree and Lizzie. That's a beautiful scene of her expecting to go back with her and having to be said, no, you can't, of Ian wanting to go with them through the stones so that he can fix something that he's not ready to talk about, to Jayme explaining that you have a brother. Everything is really based in relationship, and this whole story is, and it's not based in action packed war. That's all the context for what's going on with these characters, and Diana really got that in this one, and really wrote a beautiful episode that really focused on that.
Yeah, I agree. We talked in this last recording about Ulysses and kind of some of the issues that were happening with the storyline, or just the storyline that was in the books, and what do we do with that kind of stuff. I think this was the best solution possible.
Yes, absolutely. And it gives you John Gray's character, because as he's talking about, I love working the land in Virginia, and I'm like, who's working that land, John?
Not working that land.
I think it's you. I'm thinking you probably got some dark-skinned people out there working that land. And in Virginia, of course, that would have been what he would have done. Yeah. He at that time he would have had African enslaved peoples, more so than any other kind of indentured servant. And that's what working them, but in a very oddly conflicted way, he takes Ulysses back with him to London, so that he's free.
Yeah, but so we talked about, Jocasta had given him, in the books, Jocasta had given him manumission so he could come to her bed willingly and freely, knowing full well that really wasn't possible no matter what. Whereas possible. In this case, she gave him manumission just because she cared for him. It wasn't sex or anything like that.
No, she wanted to, she appreciated, she gave that to him and as a gift. And I don't know, we don't really get the understanding of why she did that, other than it was right after her husband Hector dies. And maybe she was hoping that he could be the help that she needed and go hither and thither without having to worry about producing other papers. But again, that's wishful thinking. He can't do that.
Yeah, but he says he chose not to leave, and he said for her. So we don't know, and I don't think we'll find out, whether or not he was in love with her and it was unrequited, or if actually something did happen, and we'll just kind of find out about it after the fact, something like that. But at the moment, he is going to freedom to England, and
well, maybe we'll see him next time, because I think Lord John does pop up, and he pops up in every.
Yeah, he comes back in the books, but whether or not we see Ulysses again.
He's going to just pop over.
He just hops down and says hi. I'm going to try out your guest room. I hear it's finished.
Let's have tea.
Yeah.
Maybe a cake. What is this? Is this peanut butter? This is yummy. It's sticky.
So another thing in relation to the race thing that I thought was really interesting, Brownsville Committee on Safety sounded very much to me like 1960s, the white councils on safety that were in the South. And then the fact that Lord John Grey was like, and Jayme were like, we got to get you out of here before that band finds out. The Committee on Safety finds out you killed a man, then we might have a lynching on our hands.
Well, so even more than that, it also reminds me of the first season.
Yeah.
When you have, is it Macquarie.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's roaming around, and he's also doing it. And they burned out houses of people who didn't pay. So this is really very much an echo. And of course, these folks are from Scotland, so they are echoing what they know. They want to protect people, and they want you to, own up and protect too, either by pledging your people or by pledging some money. Yeah. And so without that, I mean, it was absolutely very much like that.
Yeah.
I think the most poignant scene, and the scene that I missed, this is where I felt like this missed the mark, and where I wanted more, and where we're going to miss it in the near future. Roger doesn't get his call now.
I know, that's what I just said. So he's going back to be a professor. And that means he is probably not going to be a minister. He's not going to go back and struggle with who,
And one of the moments he gets that call was Jayme, obviously. But one of the stronger moments that happens is when they come across the burnt out house and they have to bury the girl. And that was the moment you're like, wait a minute, I don't understand what's happened here. And of course, it all comes clearer whenever the Browns show up, and you're like, oh, I know what happened here. I'll bet they're the ones who absolutely, killed them. But that is also Breath of Snow and Ashes. It is a foreshadowing of what happens towards the end of the book, and a big fire that happens towards the end of the book. But it's that moment was just, to open with that, just broke my heart, and they did it so well. But what I missed was
we're not going to get Roger's call to ministry,
and we're not going to get him saying the few words at her grave,
no,
or any of that. They have effectively cut that out of his story, of the arc of his story.
Yeah, which makes me sad. Yeah, I did write that. I was like, there's going to be no call for ministry then.
Yeah.
If that's the case. Yeah. Yeah. I'm just trying to think of other things. I mean, it was the way in which we talked about the wee beasties. We've talked about Bree hearing about William, but that culmination of Jayme sees his sperm in the microscope, and then the next scene is him telling Bree about William, and then about Geneva. So it's kind of a full circle kind of.
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was
wee beasties.
was quite clever. Yeah,
they did their job.
I wrote to myself, this feels like a season finale.
It did feel like that to me, and I was, when I was reading. When I saw things on Facebook, I was just like, did I get this wrong? I thought there were 12 episodes this season.
I was like, no,
and they've got him,
got
him lighting the cross. And I'm like, wait a minute, is this the end? Because it did feel like a season finale. And so so the other thing is too, Roger goes out and clears out that band. So next Jayme goes to war to bring back Clare. This is this is the Ridge's war to bring back Clare. And Roger is a part of that, and actually does his job and kills people to get her back. And so that's also something that I'm going to be missing.
Yeah.
But I understand
his own. Yeah, I mean his own conscience situation.
Yeah.
But yeah. So do you? I mean, I guess predictions. I'll put spoilers in the notes. But do you think that's where it's going to end? Is Clare gets recovered, or do you think she's still going to be with the kidnappers at the end of the next episode?
I think she'll get recovered because I mean, the previews are of him like killing people.
See, I haven't seen previews, so I have no idea.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. So there are previews, and it looks like he's actually fighting people.
Okay.
And I think that she's going to get recovered. What I think the season cliffhanger is going to be is her discovering who Wendigo is.
Yeah. Okay.
And maybe the connection between him and Master Raymond.
Okay. Yeah. Who do you think? So, like I said, Tracy's Outlander's Twitter was going on about this. Who do you think Bree, or what do you think Bree and Roger see?
I have no clue. Honestly, I don't remember what they see whenever they come back, because what they see when they come back on Ocracoke in the books. On Ocracoke Island, there is another set of stones, and
and they bump into tourists and stuff at the beach, right?
Probably. Well, Ocracoke was back in the 1960s. Ocracoke wasn't nearly the tourist draw that it is. I think mostly that happened in the late 70s and early 80s when they started getting a road in there, and they you still have to have a ferry to get over there. It's not an easy get, and so without air conditioning, and air conditioning came in in the 1960s and made the South habitable. Trust me, it's not without it. It made the South habitable, and so you started seeing kind of an explosion of growth in the South in the 1960s after air conditioning is happening, and people started flocking to beaches because then they could go back into the air conditioning. And people had some extra cash too. We had a solid middle class, which we don't really have now. I just want to point out. Not to get political, but we are in a pandemic, and it's starting to be, obvious that we don't have a solid middle class. Yeah, it's very visible now. So back at that, she might have run into a few people, but I don't think they ran into a ton.
No. But okay, so there were a couple people suggesting that it might be the Frank conspiracy, in the sense of Frank might still be around. He might not really be dead, and he might be there to whatever. So and then somebody else suggested it might be Joe Abernathy, but none of them would know exactly when they came back. No, so I don't know. So yeah, I am at a complete loss.
Unless they see a freeway, but that shouldn't make them go agape. They've seen freeways before.
But that's also assuming. See, okay, so we're assuming that what happens in the books is what's going to happen. And what if they went to a different time altogether? What if?
So, okay, they would have to then skip ahead to book 8 to be in a completely different time. And it would take out everything about Galus and them running into that's who
unless somebody has also suggested they've run into Galus. But again, that's North Carolina.
She would be gone. Yeah, and she would be gone.
Yeah.
She was gone the year or two previous, or the 5 years previous, 3 years previous, whenever they showed up there.
Yeah. I don't. We're not going to have any answers, but
or maybe Jayme and Clare created something for them.
Maybe. I like that.
Like
That's
a welcome home, or something like that.
Some kind of stone or something.
Some kind of something that says you've made it. To say this is something that they would then recognize from Jayme and Clare, because that's what we get after they go back in A Breath of Snow and Ashes, is that Clare and Jayme they get a box that is filled with letters for them about things that have happened so that they're no longer disconnected from them in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm wondering if that's something that they have created for them.
That's
I
a
just
good
thought
idea.
of that.
That's a great idea. Let's fingers crossed. That would be great.
That's what I would have
really
written.
like that. Yeah. Cool. Okay.
Right.
Anything else?
I don't have anything else. And just for the people who don't like us giggling, I don't care.
I'll be nice. Yeah, I don't care either. Oh, well.
I don't care. I like to giggle, and it's my choice to do that.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. Cool. All right. Take care. Have a good one. We'll see you later. Next time. Bye.